you'll be able to question. But should this be free for you so that you
I'll
can
stand.
questions?
I'll stand for question. This is too many chairs. Okay, I think we need to start off. I hope you all can hear me okay. Welcome to this seminar, everyone. I hope you will enjoy this session. This is a session where we'll discuss the mHealth Grand Tour. My name is Anna Campbell. I'm the project manager for the mHealth project within the GSMA, and I was also part of the delivery team that delivered the mHealth Grand Tour project. Now, for those of you, probably most of you don't know what the mHealth Grand Tour was. In its essence, it was a bicycle ride from Brussels to Barcelona. It took place in September 2013, and we had over 100 riders that cycled more than 2,100 kilometers over 22,000 meters worth of climbs over 14 days. And the objectives of this exercise was really, there were four things really. One was to showcase that people with diabetes can live a much fuller life, can do any sort of extreme sports, just like people without diabetes, supported by the right mobile technology. It was also to create an opportunity for operators and other partners in this area for cross-industry technical partnerships to really be able to demonstrate mHealth solutions in a live environment. We also conducted a clinical trial that we wanted to do to show results and evidence of the value of mHealth. And last but not least, we wanted to engage with senior policymakers to really try and advocate consensus on the regulatory framework that is needed to stimulate the adoption of mHealth solutions. So in this session, we are looking to discuss the reasons why this project happened, why did we do it, why did our partners get involved. We will talk about how we did it, the different elements that really were in place to make this project a success. And we'll also look at how this project can actually be a good model for future mHealth deployments. I'm not going to do this on my own. As you can see, I have the help of an eminent group of panelists with me. And we're hoping to make this an interactive session, so please think of questions and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So I think the first question I guess everyone will ask is, why did we do this? Why did we choose to demonstrate this technology by a bicycle ride? Why did we think this was important to show a real live demonstration of this technology? So I'm going to kick off the discussion by reaching out to Katie Gallagher at the end here. Katie is the policy officer at IDF Europe. She works on advocacy and policy-related questions within the European region, and she works with the EU Diabetes Working Group of the European Parliament. So, Katie, why did IDF Europe decide to be part of this project, starting off with GSMA, and why did you think that was important?
Thanks for the question, Anna. So IDF Europe's decision to partner with GSMA on the Grand Tour was taken on the basis of two things. Firstly, how is mobile health going to impact and benefit the lives of people with diabetes and those at risk? And secondly, how is it going to shape policy in the future? So IDF Europe's approach was somewhere in the middle. So connecting the two will take time, but working with GSMA and other partners on the Grand Tour has helped us to start this process. So as a stakeholder involved in health and consumer policy at EU level, we are attentive to the European Commission's commitment towards e-health and the current reflections on the sustainability of our healthcare systems. So in addition, we know that there are many initiatives coming from the national level on diabetes, physical activity, and mobile health, with the aim, of course, of improving the day-to-day lives of people with diabetes. However, the impact that these initiatives have in feeding into the discussions at the EU level was not quite clear to us. So bearing in mind that no country in the world has been yet able to reverse the diabetes epidemic, the real question for us was, how do we close this loop? So the answer is, we need a coherent European dialogue with the mobile health industry. Diabetes needs to be at the center of these discussions, as mobile health is going to have a huge impact on the sustainability of our healthcare systems in the future. For the impact of mobile solutions to be optimal, nothing for us without us, to quote the International Association for the Patients of Organizations mission. And just to finish, Anna, if you, the mobile health industry here in the audience today, want to break into that diabetes market, you will have to engage with the diabetes community in a meaningful way to be part of this solution. So I hope that answers the question.
That's really clear. Thank you very much, Katie. Obviously, Katie represents IDF Europe, which is a diabetes association. We also have with us Nenad Shimunko, who works for the Croatian Diabetes Association. Nenad actually lives with diabetes every day. He's also an athlete who really doesn't let his diabetes stop him doing anything. In fact, in 2012, Nenad became the first person in the world with diabetes to do a triple Ironman. And if you don't know what that is, you can ask Nenad afterwards. It's really an amazing thing to do. So Nenad, as a person with diabetes, and also you were part of riding the Grand Tour, why would you think this project was important?
For me personally, it's very important to show the people around the world that diabetes is definitely not the obstacle in your life. That I'm trying to say to all the people, especially in Croatia, that physical activity has to be the part of our daily life, and the Grand Tour was for me, one objective that I have to take to show everyone that the 13 day of riding 2,100 kilometers on a bike ride isn't something that with diabetes we cannot do. So I just wanted to prove it that diabetes will not stop me in that goal, and I think we really did a great thing during that tour, and we showed that anything is possible just with a proper glucose monitoring and with a healthy diet. There's no obstacles in life, really. That's the point.
I like that attitude. Of course, one of the objectives, as we said here, is that we wanted to be able to showcase how people like Nenad can do this, being supported by the right mobile technology. So it was vital that for the mobile angle, that we had the operator community involved as well. So on our panel, we do have representatives from mobile operators. Stephen King here is the corporate social responsibility lead for the Etisalat Group. He's worked for Etisalat in various communication and PR roles for many years, and he works to maximise the impact of mobile for development in various projects across Etisalat's footprint, which is Asia and Africa and the Middle East. So as a representative of mobile operators, why do you think it was important that operators get involved in this type of project?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that this project was absolute genius. It was really, really well thought out, bringing together the government's policy angle, the innovators from companies such as Ant, the telecom community together, plus actual patients and the customers that actually benefit, was absolutely a really, really good idea. And Janine is there, and I think she deserves a little bit of a round of applause from everyone as being the head of the health to actually bringing this together. So Janine, I just want to thank you. Now, from a return on investment from the operator taking part, we're in the UAE. We took people from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tanzania, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, from Brussels all the way to Barcelona. We invested in this exercise quite significantly, and we got a lot back. We've recently, over the course of the 8 months, been discussing with the UAE Ministry of Health, again with the help of the GSMA, and that resulted last month in an MOU, which has placed mHealth formally in the agenda of the UAE government, creating the market there for when these technologies actually come about. We also had a significant amount of publicity. We're spinning this out still, even though we finished in September, up until today, and the value of the publicity in these markets has also been significant. Internally, it's a great corporate culture, and it's helped bring everyone together and help raise awareness of health inside the company from a social responsibility respect. And overall, it's helped build relationships with Orange and with other telecoms companies that we're in touch discussions with, to have an open conversations on this issue, which is bigger than perhaps all of us individually. So I'm really happy that this happened. It was a great thing for me to take part in, and I'm looking forward and encourage everyone else to also participate in the next event in September. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen, and we'll mention that a little bit later on as well, that this project will happen again this year, so that we're very excited about that. You mentioned, Stephen, the MOU, which I think is a great thing that happened in the UAE, because it's a real great example of the regulatory community coming together with the operators as well as the diabetes community, content providers, to really commit to providing mHealth services in that region. And one of the things that is very important is to have this regulatory support behind mHealth to really make it achieve scale. And as part of the Grand Tour, we had many moving parts. One of the things was a regulatory element, and I think having that was making the project even more successful. As part of the tour, we held a very highly successful policy breakfast in Brussels, which was like a start event for the tour. And I have someone on the panel to really help me discuss the importance of this regulatory backup, which is Petra Wilson. Petra joined the International Diabetes Federation as Chief Executive Officer in November 2013. Before that, Petra was the Director of European Healthcare and Life Sciences at Cisco's Consulting Services, where she focused on health and care providers developing their strategies. And she has also held various roles at the European Health Management Association and the European Commission. So Petra, thanks for joining the panel. I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, do you think it was important to have this backup involvement of the regular community in this type of project? And if so, why?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. This amazing event happened before I joined IDF, but I was, in a previous role, able to attend the policy breakfast. So although I'm now speaking as CEO of IDF, the experience of being involved in the regulatory aspects was actually before I joined IDF, and it's work that I want to take forward now in the International Diabetes Federation. The event showed admirably that people living with diabetes can do all sorts of things, and we might not all be able to be a triple Iron man, but we can take the exercise that we need. However, in order for the 382 million people living with diabetes globally to really benefit from what we've learned from studies like this, and to learn from to really use mHealth and to integrate it into their daily lives, we have to address the regulatory environment and the wider policy environment where healthcare sits and where healthy lifestyle choices are made simple or made difficult. There's a whole range of issues that one could touch upon in the regulatory field. The obvious ones that spring to mind are around the regulations of devices and apps. You only need to step outside here to see literally thousands of devices and apps, many of which have a healthcare or healthy lifestyle application. Most of those devices and apps are still in a somewhat difficult position, and when we come to a healthcare device or app, it's not always 100% clear how it is regulated. Of course, continuous glucose monitoring is a medical device and benefits from the whole regulatory field around that. Benefits in that you have the safety and the security. Also, a great problem there is that regulation takes a long time. It can take 18 months to get through the regulatory process, and we only need to look outside to see how quickly this environment is moving. But there are a lot of things associated with the kind of healthy lifestyle choices mentioned, which are in applications that are not medical devices, but where there is little market confidence because we don't know how they are regulated. The FDA and the European Medicines Evaluations Agency are working towards this. There is a green paper promised from the European Commission in March, so in a couple of weeks' time, and we will begin to have more clarity around the regulation of devices. But it doesn't stop just with devices. The benefit of the devices is, of course, of the CGM and of the apps, is that they can collect data, many data points, many times a day. The opportunity that those large volumes of data generate. I'm sure will be talked about later on the panel, but they generate also huge questions about privacy, security, and confidentiality. And for anybody who's currently working in the European regulatory environment or in the US regulatory environment, privacy of data is high on the agenda, and people, again, don't really know how privacy regulation affects the use of such apps. And as a result, we're not going forward as fast as we could do. There are also other issues around liability. The CGM and other applications develop a huge amount of data, which could be very useful to a clinician, but clinicians are often very uncomfortable when presented with data that might create a responsibility to respond or to support a patient when they might not have the whole wherewithal to do that. If you're getting 200 data points a day from a patient from CGM, you can't possibly respond to all that. And we don't yet have a proper liability regulatory environment where clinicians feel confident in how they can support patients who want to and are willing to monitor in this way. And then lastly, I would say certainly in the social insurance environments, the reimbursement for devices and the reimbursement for patients who use devices or applications to monitor their own health, to help themselves make healthy decisions, is not integrated into our reimbursement systems. Doctors are not reimbursed for helping patients use the devices, and patients are not reimbursed generally for buying such devices. And these are also issues that we need to address on the regulatory basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. No, I think we're all very much agreement that the regulatory aspect is such an important part of any mHealth, for any mHealth solution to be able to achieve scale, and all these issues that Petra raised, obviously extremely important to address and make sure that we carry on working on together with our regulatory community in the different regions of the world. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was that one of the objectives of the grantor is that we wanted to conduct a clinical trial. The reason we wanted to do that is that one of the parts of the objectives was that we wanted to see real evidence of the value of mHealth in this sort of environment, in this sort of real environment. So we have with us Professor Mike Trunnell. Mike was the lead of this research study that was done during the tour. Mike is a National Institute of Health Research Senior Fellow. He specializes in the use of lifestyle and prevention and management of chronic disease, and he's also director of his own company, Move Lab, where the programs that he works on use web and mobile technologies to help people lead a healthier lifestyle. So thank you, Mike, for joining us. Mike, would you be able to explain briefly to us what this research study entailed, and why you think it was such an important part of this project?
Thanks, Anna, and thank you very much for the invitation to come and join you. For us, the clinical evaluation was an integral part of this exciting event. And the reason why it was so important was, as Petra has just clearly described, because we're not talking about health apps in the generic social sense. We're actually talking about clinical solutions. And to show how effectively they work, you really need to understand the science behind them, but also whether they change the disease process that you're wanting to look at. So for the tool, what we're really wanting to have a look at was, how did this change diabetes care? And how did it change the way that patients communicate? And to do that, we took 3 groups of participants. We took elite athletes with type 1 diabetes. We took normal athletes with type 1 diabetes, and I use normal in inverted commas because the fact you can cycle 2,100 kilometers means that you're pretty special anyway. And then we took people without diabetes. And what we're able to do is, by working with the fantastic partners we had as part of the mHealth tour, was look at how their response, their diabetes control changed, how their athletic performance changed. The reason why it was so inspiring for us as a partner was because it gave us the clinical data, but it also provided us with a platform to talk about how patients communicate. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Because the power in what we're doing is not just about a graph going out. It's about connectivity. And I hope when we talk through the data, I can show an example of that.
Mike, and we'll get back to you a little bit later, because obviously we have now 6 months on, we have some first conclusions of the research study, and Mike will take a look at those in a short while. However, in order to enable this research study, as Mike mentioned, there were partnerships that needed to be made, and as part of our objectives, we wanted to showcase new technology that could enable this research study. So also with us we have Benjamin Sada, who is the head of marketing at Orange Healthcare. Orange Healthcare is the part of Orange that develops e-health activities using the France Telecom Orange expertise in information and communication technologies. And obviously Orange had a great part in the Grand Tour by building the platform that enabled the research study and enabled this exciting new technology. So Benjamin, thank you for joining us. Would you be able to give us an idea of, well, partly why Orange decided to be part of this venture, and also an overview maybe of how the technology was built and how it came together?
So the first part of the answer is, well, we share with the Salad a common point of view on this. It was brilliant, and we wanted to be part of it, because at the end of the day, mobile changed the world, but it hasn't changed healthcare. So we're still struggling on how we can really provide healthcare with a service that will help both patient and physician. First, there were basically two main challenges. Of course, there was the technical challenges about having many different partners and being able to deploy the solution in a very short period of time, because we did not really start working on the platform until the end of spring. So it left us something like 4 months to develop the whole solution. And for those of you that are working in machine-to-machine, deploying a whole solution in 4 months is a pretty tough challenge. But, well, we made it. And the second challenge was, and it comes back to the regulation part, was it doesn't matter if you have the best technology in the world, it doesn't matter if you have the best application or the best CGM in the world, if you don't have the organization to use it. If the physician, the nurses, the patient association, the hospitals, if all the healthcare ecosystem does not understand what you're doing and does not have the process to, well, play with your data, play with your system, use it to, at the end of the day, have a better quality of life for patients and a better tool for physicians. So during the tour, we really tried to understand what were the key challenges from a technological perspective, but also from a service perspective. On the technology side, what was striking was we had two ways to collect data. The first way was pure machine-to-machine. So we used an HAM, and I know that HAM is in the room, so thank you. An HAM machine-to-machine hub, so completely transparent for the user, collecting data from the CGM and sending it into the cloud, the Orange Cloud, for personal medical data. The other way to collect the data was using the mobile phone. And it happens that it was not that simple to guarantee the quality of the solution, because the smartphone is an open, this smartphone was an open platform. And during the tour, we had trouble because the riders were using some other application. They were using Facebook, they were using many other applications, and in fact, the quality of the overall solution was impacted by this possibility for them to do whatever they wanted with the solution. So I think from a regulatory perspective, as well as for the service, we need to bear in mind that we work on something that needs to work, that needs to execute. And we need to protect the service from all these, how can I say that, different way of misusing it. And this was quite impressive because it does not happen once, it happens several times during the ride. Of course, since we had two ways to collect data, it was not a big deal for us, but it was a big learning for us. I wanted to tell a little bit more about confidentiality and security. The grant tool was also the opportunity to demonstrate that part of the industry, and telcos in particular, we do understand that managing personal medical data is not like managing a video on YouTube, and that we have the infrastructure, we have the asset to protect the personal medical data, to manage it in a safe and secure way. And the product we used for the grant tool, which is called the Connected Health Center, is basically a machine-to-machine technology that requires a dedicated data center to manage personal medical data. We are not using the same data center for healthcare as we're using for your mails or YouTube, for example. So we really understand this challenge coming from the healthcare regulation. And we do believe that all the partners we've been working with understand this challenge and are ready for operation deployment.
Thanks, Benjamin. Thanks for that. I think you're right in saying it was quite a challenge occasionally, really deploying these sort of things, because we were literally in the field doing it, which gave an additional layer of challenge as well.
And some rough nights.
Indeed. And Benjamin, you mentioned there was obviously different parts to the technology, the whole technology solution. There was the continuous blood glucose monitors that people were wearing. There's the M2M module. And one of the parts of the technology that was used was how some of these kits interacted with one another when on the bike, which used ANT+ technology. And we have with us today, we have Mike Pardy, who is the Global Sales Manager for the ANT Wireless Division of Dynastream Innovations. Mike has been working on the ANT protocol marketing for over 8 years, and he's also a member of the Continua Health Alliance Technical Working Group, who were actually also part of the tour, and what we worked on was compliant with Continua standards. So Mike, would you be able to tell us, why did ANT+ get involved in this, and how did you think the project was important from your perspective?
Okay, thank you very much for leaving the best for last.
Definitely.
ANT+ has been the standard in the cycling industry for many years. I started, as mentioned, 8 years ago to take the product into a commercial sense. So we've grown as the bike computer sensor method of communication standard. It's an interoperable standard, and one of the big challenges with this setup was we had a group of people with separate goals, all wanting to service their goal at the end, creating the goal of getting Dr. Cannell's study together and getting that great information out there. So it was the SIM card, it was the M2M connection, it was the cell phone, it was the heart strap, it was the bike computer, it was the CGM. All of those started off as different technologies that wouldn't communicate with each other. So we got involved partially because of our connection to Garmin, our subsidiary of the Garmin Corporation. We provided the bike computer that was integral to the ride itself. Cyclists need their bike computers to know their speed and their cadence and their heart rate. It's important. And we're also the backbone for Dexcom, which was using our technology to communicate to the Sony phone, which we were involved in, and also to the M2M connection that HMM was providing. So we helped to pull a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together, and also because of the interoperable nature of what we've built in ANT+, those, although there were some late nights, I apologize, but at least there was a structure there to follow. It wasn't I need to talk to you about your special thing, and then I need to map it over to that special thing. So the lesson I think that I learned from it was getting people to look at what the solution is required, not what their problems are. So in the case of this, the solution was to have a very reliable method to collect all the data for Dr. Cannell's study, not some of the data. So those devices had to operate all the time. And then they had to live on batteries that would last for 8 to 10 hours, because some of these stages were extremely long. and they had very short charging cycles afterwards. So there was a lot of those things that had to, yes, we know the charging cycles. So, and it all turned out great at the end. If we had have saw the diagram that was the various different pieces, and if you've ever played chops or pickup sticks and you throw them down, that's what the arrows look like. This was talking to that and back and forth, and that all was needed, but it became possible because of the structure that we had built in our operational protocol. So we were pleased to be part of it. We tried to stay out of it as much as we could, because like everybody, we were very, very busy at the time. But I think we all were able to pull it off with a couple late night discussions, and I think some tremendous results.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I think you're right in saying that it was an extremely complex solution, and initially we're going to put a map of it up here, but it's this, like Mike says, a million arrows on it, so it's very hard to explain. It will probably take a long time. But what that diagram does show, however, is that that there were loads of components, lots of people, lots of things that needed to come together, which made it complex, but also really showed how much partnerships are important for getting these mobile health solutions to work. So, Benjamin, I just wanted to ask you as well, what do you think? Do you think partnerships are one of the key things to the success of this project? How would you explain that?
This is mainly why I'm here, because, well, we succeeded because we had good partners that were committed to deliver the same solution we were working on. So, well, it was mandatory to have those partners. It was mandatory to have this mindset of we all strive to deliver this solution, regardless of, I want these standards, I want this technology, and so on. And we managed to deliver the solution because at the end of the day we had in mind to deliver this service to the riders because we wanted to do something meaningful. And I think the reason why we're proud of the Ground 2, all of us, is that because it worked, because we have the solution, not because we used an Orange technology or this SIM card or Ant Plus, or just because the service was real. At the end of the tour, one of the riders came to my team saying, "Can I keep the stuff?" And wow, it was so great. I mean, because it was real life proof that it changes something for him. That he was considering that this service was something important, that he wanted to use it on a daily basis. And I think this is mainly because of this powerful partnership, and because we have this feedback from patients and from physicians that most of us are going to do it all over again this year. So next September, I'll try to do more than just 2 days, and we'll try together to have a solution that goes beyond type 1. We've been talking with Petra that type 1 is, of course, it's a really important topic, but we cannot just type 2. The solution we have is really designed to follow up on patients having type 1 diabetes. Using quantified self-solution and engagement solution, we can build a solution slightly different, which may be really handy and powerful to manage type 2 diabetes. So this is the next challenge, going after all kinds of diabetes. And as you said, partnerships are really key, and I do hope that we will have other partners to join us. At the end of the day, what is important to demonstrate that the whole industry is ready, that it's not an Orange service or an Ant Plus service or whatever service, that it is just a service that can be made by several industrials, that it works, that it delivers service that changes life.
Yeah, thanks, Benjamin. Yes, so as we said before, and Professor Tranel mentioned before as well, we talked about the technology solution, and one of the reasons behind the technology solution was obviously that we needed that to enable the research study that Professor Mike Tranel and his team pulled together for the ride and did an amazing job doing so. So we're now 6 months down the line. We have started to see some results trickling out of this. which we're all very excited about because today is the first time we're actually seeing something of it. So I was going to ask Mike to just sort of give us a bit of a flavour of what these first outcomes have been. And I'm going to put a slide up here, which I don't understand. So I'm going to have to ask you, Mike, to take us through it.
This is why you need partners.
Exactly.
So hopefully I can speak without deafening you this time. So I'd like to echo a comment from Mike, Ben and Simon, which is one of the most exciting things about this whole journey was starting it 8 months before the ride. Me sitting there talking about what a patient-orientated solution would be, and then working out the map from there. And the map that we started off with and the one we ended with are completely different. And the weekly telephone calls, the work that we've done in between is kind of sits behind 3 graphs, which I'm going to show you today, which are very simple. And I'll talk you through what the data shows. And at the end of it, I'm going to tell you what I learned from it. So as I said, we had 3 groups of people who had different levels of diabetes control and different levels of performance. So on the left-hand side, we had people with type 1 diabetes. In the middle, we have the professional group with type 1 diabetes. And on the right-hand side, we have people without diabetes, or as our friends with type 1 diabetes on the tour call them, type 0, which I thought was quite amusing. So the thing that we learned from the onset was that the diabetes control was very different between the elite group of athletes with type 1 diabetes and our good group of athletes with type 1 diabetes. So euglycemia refers to the amount of time when your blood sugar levels are in a good zone. Now, you don't want your blood sugar levels going too high for 2 reasons. So in a clinical setting, high blood sugar levels are not good because sugar is absorbed into the small blood vessels. Now, if any of you have ever spilt a can of Coke and you leave it for a little while, it goes sticky. Well, the same thing happens inside of the body. So the sugar is absorbed into small blood vessels and it affects the tiny parts of the body and the nerves. So things like kidneys, heart, eyes are directly affected by high blood sugar levels. So you want to keep those as low as possible. The other element is that high blood sugar levels don't help athletic performance. It's like trying to run a car on the wrong type of fuel. It just really slows you down. So if you have high blood sugar levels, the patient athletes describe it as cycling with treacle in your legs. It feels really hard to get going. So the aim for us was to help people spend as much time in euglycemia. Now, one of the major barriers for anybody with type 1 diabetes are very low blood sugar levels. So low blood sugar levels are associated with you passing out, and if they stay low, you'll end up hospitalized with more consequences. Now, the thing that we saw here was that both of these groups spent very brief amounts of time in hypoglycemia, but they were spending times with low blood sugar levels. And both groups were quite similar. Compared to the group without type 1 diabetes at all, you can see that the body automatically controls the blood sugar so that it's in the same zone. But interestingly, even if you don't have diabetes, you do go low and you do go slightly high. And I think there are some lessons that we can learn from people with type 1 diabetes about how to optimally prime the body for athletic performance. So we have an enormous amount of data that was then pushed up onto the cloud and visible if patients chose to share their data with the broader community. So the thing that was very exciting for me was being able to sit in my office in Newcastle in the UK and watch in near real time the blood glucose data of a patient athlete on the French Alps. And what it started to do was realize that the power is not in graphs, it's actually in the connectivity. And the most powerful thing that came from this entire study was the connectedness that it brought to people. The conversations between patient athletes, because they could talk about their data, they could talk about how their insulin regime changed, how food changed their diabetes, but also how it changed their athletic performance. So connecting patients with patients was really exciting. The other part was that it could connect patients with care teams. So I was able to look from Newcastle and provide feedback to athletes who were on the tour about how they were doing. We also had people on the tour themselves. So you could connect people with advice or connect them with knowledge. We could also connect patients with their friends. So you could show how you were doing with your friend in Australia, in America. But you could also share it with your loved ones so that patients and their families could be reassured about what was going on, and they could actually start to have a conversation about diabetes. The final area that it started to do is connecting patients with concepts. So how to use information and empower you to make decisions on a daily basis. How to radically change the way that you approach life so that you could lead a more active lifestyle. So I can show some very exciting graphs, and I will show more and more about blood sugar levels going high and low. But the most important thing was the connectedness that it brought patients with the people and the ideas around. And I think that is something that we should hold on to, because we spend far too much time talking about data and graphs and privacy. The data belongs to patients. They should have the power to choose where they put it, making sure we have all the right regulatory and security frameworks. But we really owe it to patients to connect them. The technology is there and the knowledge is there, but I think we owe it to patients. Thank you.
Well, I so agree with you. Because when I was talking about a new pathway to deliver care, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Well, the first stage is obviously patient talking to each other. But as you say, you can share your data with your family. You can talk about it. And suddenly, something that was complex, foreign, it becomes something that you understand, that you can talk with your daughter, with your son, your wife about. And in my opinion, this is a really powerful way to deliver a new kind of care. And I'm really happy that during the tour, physician realized that, well, this connectivity, this networking capability was part of the toolkit physician had to deliver care. So, well, so agree with you.
Thank you, Mike and Ben, and I must say I agree as well. And I think it's that you raised that point there, Mike, which is really interesting, that we chose to demonstrate this as part of a bicycle tour, but obviously this idea, that, there are numerous use cases and numerous real-life examples where this technology can be used. I have, on our stand where we're demonstrating this, I've been using the example of a worried parent with a small child who's got diabetes and can be connected in that way by using this type of technology, which I think is a great use case outside of sport for the same type of technology. So I'm glad you raised that, because it's important to remember that it's not just confined to sport, obviously. Thanks, Mike, for that. That's really interesting data. And what are the next steps for this? Where are we going next?
The challenge for us is that we have, and we didn't realise this when we started. In fact, we thought we did. We thought we had a grasp on the data. Boy, did we have a lesson to learn. We've got so much data. It's taking us a long time to work through. But especially because it's easy for us to do graphs like this, but what we really want to show is the narrative of how patients are changing their diabetes control over the journey. So it's easy to show snapshots, but what we're really keen to do is show the journeys for patients, because you can see when you have this data in real time how patients are changing their diabetes control. And I think that's one of the key messages for us to get through. So coming up, there'll be a series of scientific papers, and I hope there'll be a narrative paper in there too about the journey that this entails. And something that will probably not go into those scientific papers, in fact it won't, is actually the amount of background work. And I just want to reiterate that again, that this data and the connectedness comes from creating an ecosystem where different partners are playing to their strengths to deliver something that's patient-centred. And that, for me, has been really central to making sure that we've got it. But the result of it is a lot of data, and I think as Petra was talking before, that what you have when you create a lot of data is problems, but it's also great opportunities because we can really start to drill down into that really deep data set to create added insight into diabetes control.
Great, thank you. I'm going to have to ask you as well, Nenad, because Nenad, obviously you were part of the tour and you were part of this study wearing all the kit and doing all those millions of measurements that you had to do every day. You know, as a person with diabetes, did you think this sort of research study was important? And why would you think that was important?
For sure, it's important for me. So before tour, I was doing races for 3 years, but I didn't have a continuous glucose monitor. Let's start with continuous glucose monitoring. And at the study, we received CGM 7 days before the tour. And I have to say that is a new perspective in my life, because I was measuring my sugar by sticking my fingers to have the results during the day, sometimes 10 times per day. But that's not really equally to see the results in the real time, 24 hours per day. So for me, that gives me the real value to see how I'm performing during the sport, during the days, how the special meals that I'm taking reacts on my blood glucose monitoring, and that is something that just give me so much benefit that I just cannot describe. But imagine how we can also connect this with the mobile phone industry, because let's say that all the money that is going from the healthcare systems going on treating the complications. And if we are looking to prevent these complications, healthcare, so doctors, patients, they need to have the possibility to monitor their disease properly. And I think that with all the technology that we have, I know that it's stressful for healthcare systems to provide all the people that devices, but trust me, that's the only way. It's better to invest, to get all those people, to give them the opportunity to have all the data at the real time. And I think there is no barrier to overcome this disease, because for me, after I'm having this look at just the monitor during the day, it just gave me the security, and it's just beautiful to live without the things that I had to do it before. So I think we have the real possibility to work on this and to give the people a new style of living. That's my perspective.
I was just going to say, one of the great things about having the developed world and the developing world together in this, a couple of our colleagues were representing their family members with type 1 from Pakistan, and they don't have the same, what do we call them, luxuries that perhaps that you're working with today. They're working, I mean, they're not, but they're there, and they're coming over, and they were really looking for this Dexcom and this solution, and they were really, for the CGM machines, they were wanted in their countries, but they weren't able to get it. So again, being able to see what's happening in the highest level of technology, bringing the policy into those markets is really going to help improve the standard of life in an enormous scale.
If I could just jump in on that, I mean, I think it's really important that we remember that the vast majority of people living with diabetes in the world are not living in an environment where they have access to all this. With 4 out of 5 people living with diabetes are not in the rich world where they have access to all this. But the lessons that Mike's research is showing, the experiences of the sort of the Grand Tour, Nanad's example of you can do it is something that we can take those messages and we can translate those into something that is usable in a low and middle income country. There are solutions that we can use, perhaps not quite as fancy as the ones used on the tour, but there are things that we can do that can take that forward to other parts of the world. And I think it's so important that what comes after the Grand Tour, Mike was talking about the huge volume of data, but that we make that work for as wide a community as possible.
Yeah, if I can add one point. As we move forward and try to define what the next steps are, it's always been my personal opinion that we have to look at the simplest, most reliable solution possible. The more complexity we build into the requirements, the less chance it has of being successful. As we move into developing countries where, triathletes, they love their gadgets, they are techies, they have all the latest, greatest stuff. That's easy for them to set up a user interface and do a lot of stuff. But when you have a child or someone coming from a limited educational background, gadgets aren't the things. They just need something that's going to work. So let's always think about making it just work versus making it really complicated.
Great point. Thanks, Mike. So at this point, I'd like to open up, see if there's any questions from the audience for our panelists. Yes. Do we have a microphone somewhere? Oh.
Nice and warm.
Thank you. Ralph Jans from Research to Guidance. Would you be able yet to give us a price point of the solution you tested there? I mean, delivering this kind of solution here to a non-developing country, there is probably a big gap, yeah. And how far do you see we have to go in order to have affordable solutions for those countries?
So probably the most expensive component on there was the CGM. As CGMs become more commonplace and the economies of scale for manufacture and less constraints are put on by the regulatory bodies, you'll see them become almost consumer types of products. You used to buy a strip reader for $2,500 when it first came out. Now they're given to you by your doctor. So, and the computers that are around them, the cell phones, you don't have to have a big 6.5-inch AMOLED screen to be able to perform the function. You can have a $100 smartphone if you'd like. The cycling products in this case are run-of-the-mill. They're nothing special. You could have a 75 euro bike computer and a 25 euro heart strap do exactly what you needed to do. So it's definitely scalable to the emerging markets as long as the non-emerging markets do all the tests and do all of the work ahead of time, I think. So.
Well, maybe a short comment on price point. The solution we developed for the Grand Tour is really a bespoke solution that has almost nothing to do with what we're using on the field for real life. The price point of disease management is roughly about 100 euro per patient per year. Today, this is what we see on sleep apnea, on cardiology, on everything that got reimbursement scheme, in fact. It's quite difficult to get above this limit. In fact, there are really effective and engaging solutions that have a very low price point. If you don't have to play with many different kind of devices, you can have application just to interact with the patient that are really efficient. On congestive heart failure, for example, there are several studies that demonstrate that just by having on a daily basis interaction with a patient suffering from cardiac heart failure, congestive heart failure, you can drastically change the numbers. Last year in Europe, a study made by Guy Paré from HC Montréal demonstrate that among the patients, the usual patient, 50% of them were facing readmission the months following the surgery. If you engage with them on a daily basis, it drops to almost 0%. So it's a very powerful way to be sure that people stay compliant with the treatment, understand the kind of way of life they need to have, the hygiene they need to have, and so on. And you don't have to go for fancy solution like CGM and so on. So diabetes is just one chronic condition. It has a specific requirement. It does not tell us what would be the price point of chronic disease remote management. And even if you're trying to have a price point for chronic disease remote management, I guess that we still can argue that you can have very, state-of-the-art and fancy solution that will cost a little above 100 euro per year per patient, and simple solution that might cost really, really much less.
I think I just want to jump on a slightly different angle. If you look at what Mike was saying, the other cost involved is the coverage. You've got to be able to have the connectivity. And in order to do that, we need to have the spectrum. We need to be able to have the public-private partnership to be able to show that there are mass and there are 3G coverage at the bottom of the mountains as well as at the top. So that also needs to be put in place as well. And so in many of our markets, we've already deployed the 3G. We've already got LTE in some of our markets as well. So it's there. But that also has to be considered as a point when technology companies are looking at which markets to come into.
What's important, I want to answer your question. For now, it's obvious that every person doesn't have the money to buy all the gadgets, but I will just address the situation in Croatia. As I was the first who had the CGM Dexcom in Croatia, all the people saw the benefits. So every association bought 2 Dexcom devices, and they are sharing it with each other. So they are buying the sensor for each other, and then they give the data to the medical doctor, because if the medical doctor see the data in 24-hour daily basis, they can react not by the taking the blood samples from your finger. So you have the benefit from it. So if you're looking in the future, if we will have the solutions that will cost less, it will be more available to all the people. But let's say that there's a real benefit what I see from it itself that brought us in Croatia. So I think the medical doctors can really react now better than they had the possibility before.
If I may, I'd like to make 2 points, and it's bang on cost point, because we can build fancy systems, but if no one buys them or uses them, what's the point in doing it? The idea of this was to showcase technology and the potential for mobile technologies. And for me, it's really inspired me to learn about how we can connect our patients, as I talked about before. And I know that there's a partnership between the IDF and the GSMA who are looking very seriously at the role of mobile technologies, and they've got some publications coming out showing that this isn't new. There's actually really strong data. And the reason why that's quite interesting to me is because it shows that we can reach people like we never have before. So this solution, yes, it's very expensive because you need a CGMS and you need a Garmin. That won't work for everybody. It's not supposed to. The whole concept here was about connecting, and can we use the mobile platform as a way to communicate with people and allow patients to communicate with other people? The answer to that is a resounding yes. The challenge for you guys is to make that at a price point where it's accessible to everybody everywhere. Now, the other reason it's so exciting to me is because in developing countries, people have more mobile phones than they do in developed countries. So we know people in India will have multiple mobile phones for different things. So the technologies exist. The challenge for us is to find how we can communicate with those people at a price point that's completely scalable, so that we can really start to challenge current service pathways for diabetes. So I see it as an exceptionally exciting time. But this was a proof of principle. The filter downs are the powerful bit. So take away the connectivity from this. And then the challenge is for us how to make that more broadly available.
Thanks, everyone. I think I saw, was there another hand up, another question from the audience?
Hello. Well, my question was about if the application you developed needed some kind of certification, since you crossed through different countries and you stored medical data. I know this usually is a complicated process, but
It's a very important question. The problem we have in Europe is that we don't have a common framework, common legal framework to manage personal medical data. It happens that for the countries we've been involved in, we already had an hosting solution that were compliant with the toughest regulation of all the countries we were going through. As a matter of fact, it is really difficult to deploy today a worldwide solution using just one hosting capability. For example, if you want to operate in the United States, you need to be HIPAA compliant. If you want to operate in Germany, every land has its own way of doing it. In France, you need to be ZIP compliant. So it's kind of a nightmare. But, well, Petra is working on it. And hopefully, well, I think people at EU level understand the problem. It's just that it's all about security. We don't want to trade the security. We want to have a very high level of confidentiality and security because personal medical data requires security and a high level of confidentiality. And today, we're struggling to find the correct point. We don't want it to be too much because we want everybody on board, but still, it has to be tough. So for the two, it was quite easy, but we were still working on a way we can have something much more efficient.
Just very quickly, so let Mike have a quick word. The key issue, I think, here is that we're in a time of change in how we think about health-related data and medical data. The received wisdom at the moment, both in the European Union, in the United States, and around the world, is that medical data are different and special to other data. And whilst that's true, and whilst it's very important to keep very private medical data in private and secure, a lot of what we're talking about here are data points that patients and citizens are very happy to be transmitted and to share in order to drive forward research, in order to help them make better decisions wherever they are. And we are in a strange transition period where the legal systems are beginning to adjust to a real change in the perception and use of data and the understanding of privacy and ownership around data. The problem is law is not a very fast-changing animal, and when you put it in the context of the changes that we've seen in the use of data, and we only need to look at how children use Facebook or Instagram now compared to how most of us grew up thinking about data. The law simply hasn't kept pace. But there are many people lobbying to try and ensure that the law does have the capacity to keep pace so that we can really deliver the change and the support that Mike's research and that this Grand Tour has shown is possible.
So some of the most interesting conversations we had were about data regulation, as you can imagine. So you cycle through Belgium, Germany, France, Spain. There's 4 different regulatory bodies, which was really something we had to challenge head on. So in the timescale that we had, we couldn't get approval through 4 countries. We did have a data platform that was approved. And the way that we worked this was in 2. So 1, every patient was consented into a research study. So this wasn't designed to be rolled out. They consented to their data being stored in a specific way. But the other element of this is that the data isn't ours. The data belongs to the patients. The patient athletes choose to share it with us. And that was quite a key part of the public-facing element of it, because you could take real-time glucose data, real-time heart rate data, and the patient chose where they shared it. They could share it in near real time on the web. They could choose not to share it with anybody. They could choose to just have it going to their own account. So I do think there are some really big challenges ahead, because there's such potential for us to do it. In the short term, we found ways to enable people to do it in a research setting. But I do think that the key is to remember, as Petra's just said, that data belongs to patients. It doesn't belong to us. We need to make sure that it's secure and looked after, but the patients have to own that data, And that's the big transition. Medical data doesn't belong to the medical community, it belongs to the patient. And that's a philosophical shift that we really have to take head on.
Thank you, Mike. My screen here is telling me that we are out of time. So firstly, I just wanted to thank all the panelists for coming. Really appreciate it. Really great to hear this and to sort of experience again what was a really great project in the Grand Tour. I just wanted to mention that everything that we discussed here, this also, if you haven't seen it, there is an opportunity to go and see this technology live in action here at Mobile World Congress at the Connected City, as well as on the orange stand. And the other thing I want to mention is that there'll be around diabetes and mHealth. There's another session this afternoon on our main Congress agenda, which is hosted by our friends at the IDF, which will carry on this discussion. And independent of what past you carry, we're happy to have you come to that session as well. So we'd love to see you there. So thank you everyone for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of Mobile World Congress. Thank you.